Welcome to the lesson on the present perfect versus the present perfect continuous. In this lesson, we will discuss the similarities and differences between the present perfect with the present perfect continuous tense. For example, when you meet somebody new, you often talk about yourself and your life. For example, my family has been living in California for 10 years. I've been working at an engineering firm for 5 years. My son has been studying medicine at university. My daughter has been studying law. All of these sentences use the present perfect continuous. Some textbooks call the present continuous tense progressive, but it means the same thing. Let's look at a couple of more examples of the present perfect and present perfect continuous tense. I have studied English for 5 years. I have been studying English for 5 years. So what is the difference? Before we talk about the differences, let's talk about the similarities. First, each starts in the past and has some importance in the present time. Second, each uses for and since. Third, each uses habitual actions with verbs like work, live, study, play, wear glasses, and other similar verbs. First, each starts in the past and has some importance in the present time. For example, he has wanted to go to New York since he was 10 years old. They have studied engineering for 3 years. The water has been boiling for 10 minutes. I have been studying for this test since 7 o'clock this morning. Next, each uses for and since. He has wanted to go to New York since he was 10 years old. They have studied engineering for 3 years. The water has been boiling for 10 minutes. I have been studying for this test since 7 o'clock this morning. Next, each uses habitual actions with verbs like work, live, study, play, wear glasses, and other similar verbs. With habitual action, there is no difference in meaning between the present perfect and present perfect continuous tenses. For example, he has lived in California for 5 years, and he has been living in California for 5 years have the same meaning. They have studied engineering for 3 years. They have been studying engineering for 3 years have the same meaning. Now let's look at the differences between present perfect and present perfect continuous. For present perfect, first, the emphasis is on the result of an action, meaning the action is completed. Second, it's used with non-action verbs that can't use the continuous ing ending. Third, it's often used with ever and never, and it's used with how often questions. Present perfect continuous is used to put the emphasis on the ongoing action, meaning it's not completed yet. Second, it's used with how long questions. Next, the emphasis is on the duration of time for an action, whether it's finished or unfinished. Lastly, when the action is finished but you can still see the results, we use present perfect continuous. Let's look at the two differences between the present perfect and present perfect continuous tenses. First, present perfect emphasizes the result of an action, the completion of the action. For example, I have worked on my homework for 2 hours means I have finished my homework after working for 2 hours. With present perfect continuous tense, the emphasis is on the ongoing action. So the example, I have been working on my homework for 2 hours means I have not finished it yet. I'm still working on my homework after 2 hours. Second, present perfect is used with non-action verbs. Non-action verbs are verbs that describe states, senses, or mental activities. For example, have, be, feel, hear, smell, taste, believe, think, know, understand. These verbs cannot use ing at the end. For example, I have had 10 cell phones. I have been a lawyer for 2 years. I have heard this story before. You haven't tasted this before. We have thought about it before. She has known them for years. The present perfect is also used with ever and never. For example, have you ever visited Las Vegas? No, I have never visited Las Vegas. Has he ever failed a class? No, he has never failed a class. The present perfect is also used with how often questions. For example, how often have you been to San Francisco? I have been there 6 times. How often has she called you? She has called many times. Present perfect continuous tense is used with how long questions. For example, how long have you been living here? How long has he been studying medicine? How long have they been dating? Also, present perfect continuous tense is used to show emphasis on duration of time, whether the action is finished or unfinished. For example, in the questions how long, the answers I have been living here for 10 years puts the emphasis on the for 10 years. He has been studying medicine since 2005. The emphasis is on since 2005. They have been dating since March. Emphasis is on since March. Lastly, present perfect continuous is used when the action is finished but you can still see the results. For example, you are soaking wet. I've been walking in the rain because I forgot my umbrella. You are soaking wet means I can still see the results of the action even though you're not currently walking in the rain. You look angry. Have you been fighting with your boyfriend again? Because you look angry, I can see the results of your action of fighting with your boyfriend. In this lesson, we discussed the similarities and differences between the present perfect with the present perfect continuous tense.